1967. It looks like a prison. The bureaucracy became real prison wardens. They were not to begin with. And finally, and with this I would end, the greatest, maybe, Israeli success, which I hope this meeting and others would prove that this is a failure, but it is not yet a failure. The greatest success is that 41 years onwards, these Israeli policies are not known. Definitely the fact that they were taken in 1967 and hasn't changed is not known. And that the Israeli, very simplistic to man, not very sophisticated, very transparent lies about what they are doing, that any intelligent person could easily decipher and expose for what they are still being repeated by the mainstream media in the West, including The Guardian, by all the mainstream television networks, including the BBC and ITV and Sky News and what have you, and is accepted by all the political elites of the West, including, of course, the British government.
Today, Israel continues to steal Palestinian land in order to build more and more settlements. The security wall that Israel erected is instrumental in this, as it encloses a large portion of the West Bank's most fertile land. 3.5 million Palestinians live as virtual prisoners. In the eyes of the Israeli state, they have no basic human rights. Israel kidnaps and imprisons Palestinians on a daily basis. There are over 10,000 Palestinians in Israeli prisons. Men, women, and children are killed almost daily for opposing the occupation. The Israeli state, with its Zionist ideology, won't stop until the last Palestinian living in Palestine is expelled, imprisoned, controlled, or killed. The Palestinians who live in Israel are treated as second-class citizens. They are excluded from the society and are subjugated by racist policies.
Now we're starting to see the settlement. This is the beginning of the settlement to be. They gave it in the name of Kidmat Zion, which is a very religious name. And it is to absorb around 250 housing units, which means nothing less than 15,000 new settlers. The settlers who moved here are members of the fanatic ideological settlement movement called Gush Emunim. So those are the new neighbors that we have, the fanatic ideological settlers. And you can see that they have not just the army to protect them and to enslave them, but also they have special guarding agents that are sitting on top of their house. So we see that sometimes when the women are getting down to throw the garbage, she has a bodyguard in front and a bodyguard behind. When the women and their children are moving out of the neighborhood, there is a bodyguard car in front and the bodyguard out behind. And those bodyguards, by the way, are not paid by the government. They are paid by my taxes as a taxpayer, because these are private security companies that are, paid by my taxes for special requests based on security needs. And of course the security needs are not to protect me as a taxpayer, but to protect the illegal settlers that are moving on my land against my will. And that's the controversial reality that we here live in. These are not only the lands that were confiscated. Behind the mountain you have a vast majority of lands that are owned by Abu Dis overnight were announced as confiscated areas for security reasons. And they won't allow me to move around because at one point I'm sure the security will follow me. But I wish I could take you, like you see the wall zigzagging in and out. Palestinians out, Israelis and empty land in order to grab all that empty lands for the expansion of a settlement to be. Now the bigger picture of Jerusalem that the Israeli municipality is not even hiding is the issue of metropolitan Jerusalem, the master plan 2020 for the metropolitan of Jerusalem, where if you follow the route of the wall, it is bringing Palestinian neighborhoods out and bringing illegal Israeli settlements in to the metropolitan of Jerusalem. For example, Abu Dis, you see how Abu Dis is adjacent to Jerusalem. It's like within walking distance, 5 minutes walking distance, you're in Jerusalem. This is Jerusalem. Internationally, historically, this is Jerusalem. But Abu Dis, with its population, concentrated Palestinian population, is out of the master plan for Jerusalem, whereas Ma'ale Adumim settlement that is built on Abu Dis land, like 5 kilometers from here, is into the master plan of Jerusalem because of their Jewish majority or their Jewish existence. The same thing for Beit Lahem area. Beit Lahem, the city of Jesus, is out of Jerusalem, metropolitan, although it's 12 kilometers drive. It's like 12 minutes drive literally between center Jerusalem and center Beit Lahem. But because it's concentrated Palestinian area, it is out of the metropolitan of Jerusalem. But Gush Etzion blocks, settlement blocks that are 20 kilometers away from Jerusalem are within the metropolitan of Jerusalem because of their Jewish population. So the metropolitan of Jerusalem is so clear, racist, apartheid, whatever you want to call it. Jews in, Palestinians out. So this is the bigger picture. And the internal picture is with the Israeli Jewish fanatics that we have to deal in. So you have fanatics on the ground, you have fanatics at decision-making level. You tell me what is the way out.
Generally, the Palestinian opposition takes the form of peaceful, non-violent protests, like in the village of Bilin and Nialin. But from time to time, it also takes the form of suicide attacks, when desperate young men, feeling they have nothing to live for, explode themselves in Israeli cities. There is no opposition to Zionism in Israel. There are only small, insignificant groups that remain almost invisible and ignored in Israeli society. And their focus is almost exclusively on the West Bank occupation and the Gaza siege. None of the existing peace organizations in Israel is concerned or even interested in the real causes of the conflict. One of the biggest opposition groups comprises of some 50 anarchists, most of them still in high school. They joined peaceful Palestinian demonstrations in West Bank villages and end up playing cat and mouse with the soldiers pursuing them through the hills. Another group, Gush Shalom, is mainly made up of senior citizens.
Good morning, Yaakov Aleiko.
You're welcome. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Just like Combatants for Peace and a few other tiny groups. Gush Shalom is not against Zionist policies as a whole. It only specifically protests against the occupation of the West Bank and the Gaza siege. In this situation, it is hard to even determine how positive the impact of those leftist organizations is. After all, Their very existence convinces most Israelis and the world that Israel is an open, free, democratic state.